All right, attention everyone, attention everyone. So we are going to have questions from the audience. So raise your hand if you need a card to write a question, and we'll make sure the moderator gets it. And in the interest of time, your question may be asked by the moderator. Veronica, if you could pass out some postcards to everyone that has their hands raised. She's coming around. Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. This is really important, and quite honestly, I've taken some heat as to why a Democratic club would host 2 Republican candidates. And so I want to tell you why. We cannot tell half the electorate to disengage for 2 years because one of these 2 gentlemen are going to represent us in Washington, D.C. So we get up from the table and we say we're not going to eat anything because we don't like what's on the menu, instead of asking, hey, can you prepare something a certain way? Obviously, we know Washington is polarized. Can't get a lot done. However, in the Antelope Valley, here, we want to try to make something happen, do something different. Got a lot of young people on my board that's willing to do something different. Arthur Callaway, Veronica Fields, Brandon Zavala. We're willing to push the ticket. And so we want these 2 gentlemen, one of whom is going to represent us in Washington, D.C., to kind of do what we would like them to do. Represent us in Washington, the values and things that we need done here locally in the Antelope Valley. We want them to go out and do our business. And we're not going to tell, it wouldn't be good leaders if we told half the electorate to sit out. Now, if you choose not to vote for one of these candidates, fine, that's your choice. But you need to listen. You need to stay engaged. And so this is what we're doing today. We invited everybody out. This is where the Democratic Club of the High Desert has their meetings, and I welcome everyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent, agnostic. And so I'd like to welcome everyone. Councilman Fred, thanks for coming out. Senator Knight, Tony Strickland, Larry Cimboli, thank you for being here. I know everyone took their time out of the day to be here. So, having said that, there's going to be a straw poll afterwards in which you're going to get a little marble and decide who. We're going to make a little fun here. We're going to decide who you thought won this debate. And without further ado, so we made a selection for moderator. I could not think of a more professional, astute, experienced person in Antelope Valley to be our moderator. And I'm going to hand it over to Sandy Corrales-Phoenix.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this hot Friday afternoon. We are going to start our forum with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Larry Cimboli, will you please lead us in the flag salute? There you go. Pledge allegiance. All right, you may be seated. So I'm going to echo a bit of Jonathan's comments as a past president of this club. How ironic that it is most likely Democrats that will choose our next Republican Congress member. So we are here to ask some tough questions, and let me get some housekeeping rules out of the way. Please, everyone, make sure that your cell phones are turned off or to vibrate. And we, of course, I don't have to tell this very polite bunch to refrain from outbursts such as applause or booing or whatever it is we like to do, cheering. We had a coin toss prior to starting this forum, and opening remarks will be 2 minutes, and we are going to start with Senator Knight.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming on a Friday. Thank you, Jonathan and Sandy, and of course, Larry Cimboli, for allowing us to come in front of you and speak about the issues that are going to affect all of us. One of us is going to be the representative for at least the next 2 years in the House of Representatives. We're both Republicans, and being here at the High Desert Democratic Club, it's a little bit off, but I appreciate Jonathan for doing this, because we shouldn't just be a representative for the Republicans, or a Democrat representative shouldn't just be for the Democrats, it should be for everyone. So I'm going to tell you what I've done. When I ran for Palmdale City Council out here, I said one thing. I said I'm going to represent, and I'm going to do it by how I live. I'm going to do it how I was raised, and if you know how I was raised out here, you probably know my family, you know my father, and you know the history. When I ran for assembly, I said I was going to do the same thing. I was going to lead this community in the assembly, and I was going to do it quickly and easily so that you would understand. I was going to be honest. I was going to have an open door, and I hate the open door policy. I have an open phone. I give my cell phone to everyone, every group I ever speak to. It's 400-5207. I put it in the paper, I put it on the news. You should be able to call me. Ran for Senate, the same thing. And I told you a couple different areas that I was going to be a leader in without a doubt. One was going to be veterans, because this is a huge veteran community. I come from a veteran family. I am a veteran. So it's very near and dear to my heart. And I also said I need to keep taxes low, because I think taxes are very high in California, and if we keep raising them, it hurts the economy. Now, if you're in a state that's got very low taxes, there might be a different discussion, but here in California, there's not. There's no discussion there. I have done that. I'm asking for your vote to send me to the United States House of Representatives. I will lead the same exact way, with honesty, with an open phone policy, with the ability to talk to me.
Thank you, Senator Knight. We will next hear from Senator Tony Strickland.
Well, I want to thank the Democratic Club for having this important debate. It is important that you're here, and I'm honored that you took time out of your busy schedule, because one of us will be the next congressman representing the 25th Congressional District. There's a difference in leadership in terms of getting things done between me and my opponent. In the primary, my opponent accused me in the Antelope Valley press of being, quote-unquote, a deal maker, and he used it in a negative connotation. And you know what that means, being a deal maker? It means I sit across the aisle from Democrats and Republicans to try to work to accomplish to get things done. We already have too many people in Washington right now that are not talking to each other, and it's their way or the highway, and so they don't come together to get things done, and then what happens is we all lose. I don't care if it's a Republican idea, I don't care if it's a Democratic idea, I care if it's a good idea. And if it's a good idea, I will fight for that good idea for my district and for my country. I grew up in a time when people did work together and got things accomplished. I think when I was young, Ronald Reagan worked with Tip O'Neill. They didn't always agree, but they worked together to try to get things accomplished. Bill Clinton reached across and worked with Newt Gingrich and Bob Dole. They got a lot accomplished working together for the good and the great of this country. In fact, it was the last time that this country had a balanced budget. You won't always agree with me, and I acknowledge that. However, I will proactively seek you out. I'm not going to give you out my cell phone and expect you to call me. I'm going to call you, and I'm going to sit down with you and ask what you think and work together to solve problems, real solutions for this country. I've met with some of you already here in this audience, and I have to tell you, I was shocked when I sat down and talked with some of you, because my opponent has now represented the Antelope Valley for 8, 10, 12 years, and almost to a T, every person I met of the Democratic persuasion since the primary and asked me what you think, all of you said, Steve Knight's never met with me. That'll be a difference in leadership. I will not only meet with you, we'll work together to solve the problems for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our first question, we're going to start with a very broad one, and we're going to give each candidate two minutes to respond. We're going to start with Senator Strickland. What are your top 3 priorities if elected?
Well, number one is a stronger economy. I think we need to make sure that we have lower taxes for hardworking California families. We need to make sure that government's efficient, that the money we do spend is spent efficiently. That's number one. Number 2 is jobs. We need to fight for good, high-pay, mortgage-paying jobs. And number 3 is energy. we're now dependent on foreign oil here, and I think we could be energy independent. And it's not only an economic issue, it's a national security issue. If we bring energy and renewable energy here, that means we're not sending billions of dollars to countries that don't like us, that fund terrorist networks. And we need to make sure we transition California into a more efficient renewable economy. I've been on the front lines on that in Sacramento, and I know, talking to some leaders here in the Antelope Valley, who want to be a cluster for renewable energy, like Silicon Valley is for high tech. I want to be part of that solution to bring about high-paying, mortgage-paying jobs here to the Antelope Valley, and I'm looking forward to working with you on all three of those items.
Thank you. Senator Knight.
Well, here in the Antelope Valley, we've always wanted better jobs. We have. We wanted our home prices to rise. All of those things we've been working on for 100 years out here. When we get a big ramp up, like a new production over here at Lockheed or Northrop, then things happen. So it's always going to be the economy, it's always going to be opportunities, it's always going to be what we can bring to here. Secondly, I would always want to have a strong defense for this country. Always. A strong defense doesn't just mean we have the biggest stick. A strong defense means that our allies look to us and say, golly, we got somebody over there that we can rely on. And if we're in trouble, they're going to be with us. And our enemies look at us and they say, we don't want to do anything to America because they're so strong. Those are the two biggest. But right here, I would put the third as our schooling. Our schooling has got to be better in America. We're ranked about 37th. It's got to be better, not just here in California, but it's got to be better across the country. Now, I have created a program that we've put in 5 schools, 3 in Santa Clarita, 2 right here in the Antelope Valley. And it talks about computer science and how we get kids involved in computer science, which either evolves into a computer science degree or an engineering degree. When we get those kids involved in that, then we can produce a new program. A lot of these kids don't want to go to school for 4 years. They want to go out there and change the world. Talk to a 19-year-old right now. They want to change the world. If we can build a program that puts an 18-month curriculum in there and states it and says at the end, you're going to be a coder. Microsoft, Google, all of those companies have come forward and said, if you can do that, we will not ask the government for S-1 visas because we'll have enough kids here. That's the transformation to education. We're always going to have brick and mortar. We're always going to have four-year colleges. But if we can think a little bit outside the box and give kids a different opportunity, it's going to be better for all of us.
Okay, so we're going to enter a round of questions where they'll have 1 minute to respond. And I do want to take this time to thank Jonathan Irvin for asking our Democratic Club of the High Desert membership to submit their questions. So that's what you're going to see here in the next round. Okay, gentlemen, we'll start with Senator Knight. We are still recovering from the worst recession since the Great Depression. What have you done to create jobs? What specific programs will you advocate for in Congress?
1 minute, very quickly. So we just passed an aerospace bill about a month ago. That gives us an opportunity to get the next strategic aircraft right here in Palmdale, right here in California, to give 250 subcontractors a job here in California. When we go back into session next week, we're going to do part 2 of that aerospace bill. If those bills are in place, California will have the leading edge in getting the next strategic aircraft right here. That is what I've done just over the last year. If you send me to the U.S. House of Representatives, that is how I'm going to deal. We're going to have to look at the problem. Look, the area right here is aerospace. It's filmmaking. It's trying to attract manufacturing jobs out here. Well, let's do something that can actually get that. The aerospace bills that we have passed will do that right here in this valley.
I agree. California is the film making capital of the world, but we had a lot of runaway production in Canada, New Mexico, and across the country. So I authored a bill that we make sure we have a movie tax credit so we can keep those jobs here in California and help grow our economy. But when I passed that bill, I passed it for everybody. Meaning I didn't say I'm only going to do it for Disney and Warner Brothers, but Paramount, you're left out. But that's what my opponent did when he passed that defense bill. He left out Northrop. And only after he got heat, after passing it for Boeing and Lockheed, he left out Northrop. If you're going to do one economic for one, you have to do it for all. And that's the key, is we need to fight for all high-paying jobs. Northrop is a major, major employer in this district. They've now sold to Germany. They're on the path to NATO. They're on the path to Japan. They should not have been left out of that tax credit. If it's good for Antelope Valley, you shouldn't pick winners and losers. Government shouldn't pick winners and losers, and Steve showed bad judgment by picking two and leaving one out.
Okay, as moderator, I'm going to use my prerogative to allow a 15-minute rebuttal because Senator, 15-second rebuttal because Senator Knight's name was invoked.
Sure,
Is that okay?
sure.
And I will offer the same to Mr. Strickland when that's necessary.
Absolutely. When you don't know about something, you might read something in the paper, take a snippet, and say, golly, I can attack him on that. Understand, for 7 months we've been dealing with Northrop, Boeing, and Lockheed, all of them. When these two bills come together, everyone's under the same umbrella. Right now, just yesterday, I spoke to the Vice President of Northrop. He couldn't be happier with what we are doing with these bills.
Okay. So let us move on to our next question. We're starting with Senator Strickland. Immigration reform has always been a priority for us Democrats, but in the last few weeks, it has become a major issue of urgency for the entire country, with over 57,000 children coming through our southern borders from Central America. Are these opportunists wanting amnesty and U.S. citizenship, or are they refugees seeking safety and asylum in the United States?
First and foremost, I'll never fault anyone for want to be part of this American dream that we have here. We're a nation of immigrants. My mom's an immigrant from Germany. And what this shows is that our immigration system needs to be fixed. I feel for those children who have coyotes bringing them across many miles. They're frightened. They're here. And it just shows you that we need to fix our immigration system. I often bring up Patsy Ayala, who lives in the Santa Clarita Valley. It took her 13 years to go through the process to get her citizenship, a lot of money. And while she was going through that process, her mom passed away in Mexico, and she couldn't go to her mom's funeral because then she would have to start all over. That's wrong. We need to cut down the bureaucracy. People who want part of that American dream, we need to fix the immigration system so they can have a part of that American dream.
Thank you. Senator Knight.
Absolutely. For the next minute, I can say a lot of gobbledygook and say we need to fix it. Or I could tell you what really needs to be done. What really needs to be done is legal immigration needs to be fixed in this country. It hasn't been over the last 50 years, so legal immigration has been so difficult that the only people who love it here are immigration attorneys. They're the only ones who can figure it out. They're the only ones who can make sure that you're going to pay your $7,500 to get into this country legally. If we really want to work it from the legal standpoint, give many more opportunities for people to come to this country, and make it a clear set policy on how you do it. If we do that, it will, in essence, make its own quota system. It'll, in essence, make its own system for how many people come into this country, and we won't be going out there and saying, you know what, you're a doctor, you can come to this country, but you're not, and you're not skilled, and you don't have any education, so we don't want you in this country. That is what's happening today. That's what's happening with bad policy. That's what's happening when people don't say anything about immigration except we need to fix it. Let's actually fix it.
Great, thank you. Voters would like to know what style of leadership they can expect from you in the next, as our next congressman. So the next two questions will give us a glimpse on how you will govern. And we'll start with Senator Knight. Name a time you broke ranks with your Republican Party on an issue of importance to your constituents.
Well, there's several examples of when I've broken ranks. In the 6 years I've been in the Assembly and the Senate, I've been in leadership for about 4.5 of those years. And so either the leader of the Assembly or the leader in the Senate has always come and said, we're going to do this. This is a drill. This is some sort of a thing that we're going to do that's going to help us down the road. On several occasions, I broke ranks with that. Well, many people have. And said, no, that's not what we're going to do, because that doesn't advance what we need to do for this state. Now, specifically, I can't give you an idea of what kind of leader I am, because you've seen it over the last 6 years. You've seen what I've done. You've seen what kind of person I am. That's the kind of person I will continue to be. the type of leadership you should get is the type of person that you elect into office. They should have the right morals. They should have the right ethics. Just being a politician shouldn't drag you down into the mire. You should elect a good person.
Great, thank you. Senator Strickland.
Specifically, I was one of 3 Republicans that voted for the renewable energy standard that we have here in California, that 33% of our energy is in renewable energy. Number 2, in AB 43 in 2001, I voted for a study that said we need to look into the income inequality for women because I think we should have equal pay for equal work. 2012, I reinstated the Healthy Families Program. This is a program that worked for kids. It actually provided 800,000 kids health care that couldn't otherwise afford it. It was eliminated. I authored the bill to reinstate Healthy Families. I'm a big supporter of the Prop 5 initiative. It's Kids California First 5. These are giving kids a chance to start early in educational process to make sure that they have a successful education to get them a good start. Those are just specifically 4 items, but we can go into more. The key is, again, I don't care if it's a Democratic idea or a Republican idea, I only care if it's a good idea, and I have specific examples where I broke ranks with my party.
Actually, the next question is going to start with Senator Strickland, and it's along those same lines. Name an issue in which you led your Republican Party on a bipartisan effort and worked with Democrats to accomplish it.
Good question. There was a bill that I authored every year to eliminate the sales tax on manufacturing equipment because I believe manufacturing is what drives an economy. And every year it got killed in committee because the majority party, the Democratic Party, didn't want to lose that sales tax revenue. And we were only one of 3 states in the union that charged sales tax on this manufacturing equipment. So Alex Padilla came to me, we worked together, he said, hey, we can't do it for everybody, but let's do it for green technology, because I think I can get enough Democrats on that side, and if you can get enough Republicans, let's get it done. So I went, I got upset a lot of people on my Republican side, Alex upset some on the Democratic side, but we worked together and we got that bill passed. We got it signed by Governor Schwarzenegger, and now we're getting more manufacturing jobs and green technology. That's what we need to do. We need to work together to solve those problems, because what's happening in Washington, they would look at that problem and say, if you don't go with my original bill, I'm not going anywhere. I was willing to take a half loaf because it was the right thing to do to move the state forward for manufacturing jobs.
Well, first, I'll give you 3 examples. The Veterans Bond Act, I passed in my 2nd year in the Assembly. It saved $240 million to vets over the next 20 years on CalVet loans. That was a bipartisan movement. That was an issue where I got an awful lot of Democrats to come over and co-author the bill because they knew this will help our veteran community. Right here at the Palmdale School District, I've ran a bill for 6 years to make it safer for our kids in public education when it comes to volunteering in school. That has been a bipartisan movement. We've just been stalled by certain groups in Sacramento. But that has been a movement that Republicans and Democrats have jumped on board. The aerospace bill couldn't have been a bigger push from Republicans and Democrats, from the Speaker's office to the pro tem to the governor. All of them were instrumental in pushing this bill. But the last thing I'd like to say is, if answering this question, we should look into our candidate statement that we did back in June. And on the 2nd line of the candidate statement from my opponent, it says, I want to go to Congress to oppose Obama. Now, if you want to work with someone, and in your candidate statement you say, my goal is to go to Congress to oppose Obama, not President Obama, but Obama. That makes me think as a voter, and I'm the only voter up here of the 2 of us in this district, that I can't vote for you if that's going to be your goal. Your goal is to go there to oppose my president, your president. So I find it hard to believe that you're going to work across the aisles.
Okay, Senator Knight, I'm going to use my moderator's prerogative and offer 15 seconds to Senator Strickland.
What you saw is I said I oppose Obamacare, and I know it's later on down the line I can talk about health care policy. But yeah, I believe Obamacare was written poorly. I do believe we need to fundamentally fix health care. I know it's a question later on down the line. But, you know, best indicator of future performance is past performance. And I encourage you, You're close to Democratic colleagues up in Sacramento. Talk to them. Ask them how Steve Knight worked with them and ask them how I work with them. I'm encouraging you to call Democrats and say, who do they work with better? I'm encouraging you to do that.
Okay, we're not going to have a rebuttal to the rebuttal, but let us continue. Our next question, we're going to start off with Senator Knight. Congressman Buck McKeon has represented the 25th Congressional District since 1992. Assess his legacy and describe your relationship with him.
Well, I've known the congressman from about 1990, 1991. I've had a good relationship with the congressman. I haven't had a close working relationship with the congressman. I would say that he's done an okay job for the district. It's hard to say when we don't see him very often. He doesn't come to this area very often, and when he does, it's a fanfare. I know Antelope Valley Press is notified. I know that Channel 3 is notified, but I would say he's done an okay job. He has been a chair of two of the largest committees in Washington, D.C., and part of that is because of what you do, and a lot of that is because you've got enough tenure to become a chairman. But 22 years is enough.
Okay, Senator Strickland.
I'm proud to say I have the support of Chairman Buck McKeon. I think he's done a remarkable job for the district. Most members of Congress have never been chair of one committee. He's been chair of two major standing committees, Education, Workforce, also Armed Services. And Armed Services is very important to the Antelope Valley and throughout the 25th Congressional District. And again, difference in leadership. I'm honored to also say I have the support of the incoming chair of the Armed Services Committee, Mac Thornberry, out of Texas. And what that means is he's indicated that he would like me to be on the Armed Services Committee. And I think that would be very important for the 25th Congressional District and for the Antelope Valley, and to be able to work to get things done. But I'm proud to say I have the support of Chairman Buck McKeon. I think he's done a remarkable job for this community. That's all I'll say about that. Thanks.
Okay. We are in the Machinist Union Hall, and I'd like to thank Penny Beaton, who's standing in the back there, for your hospitality this afternoon. We are here in the aerospace capital of the world. Gentlemen, describe your relationship with labor unions. What can working families expect from you as a representative in Washington, D.C.? And we're starting with Senator Strickland.
I've had a good relationship with the labor unions. I've had a good relationship with particularly the construction trades. My dad was a maintenance man. He worked with his hands after he served in Korea and Vietnam. In any industry that's fighting for mortgage-paying jobs, I'm going to work collectively too. Does it mean I agree on all the issues? Absolutely. Absolutely not. But I have sat down with labor leaders, both in Sacramento when I was there, and also here locally. I've already met with the air traffic controllers. I've met with the machinists. I've met with the electrical workers. And again, as I sat down with them, as I talked, what are the important issues? What do you think I need to know about? They talked to me about apprenticeship programs and things like that. And as we went through back and forth, I asked one last question. I said, has Steve Knight ever called you in the 10 years, sat down with you like I'm doing right now? And the answer was no. And I think that's a function of leadership. I'm going to represent everybody in the 25th Congressional District if I'm lucky enough to be your congressman.
All right, Senator Knight.
Well, I'm going to tell you things that I believe in my heart. I'm not going to tell you what I think I should say to this group, and I should say something else to the next group. When I've worked with unions up in Sacramento, we've had a tenuous relationship. I want to work to get more jobs. I want to work to get more opportunities. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye on how that's going to happen. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye on what the standards are going to be. Never had a policy where I said, you know what, we're not going to talk to that group because they're not going to support my party. We have had a working relationship, but if a Republican comes into a Democrat hall and then says to you what he thinks you want to hear, and then goes somewhere else and says something different, we might want to look at that candidate and say, well, what's he going to say on the next time? What's he going to say in the next time? I'm telling you right now, when it comes to unions, I've had an open door relationship. We've had a good relationship but it's been a little bit difficult on how we see eye to eye on how the opportunities are going to be created.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to offer 15 seconds of rebuttal to Senator Strickland.
I don't say anything different to anybody. Don't look at the rhetoric, look at the record. I think it's very important. Look, I fully admit I'm not going to agree with everybody 100% of the time. In fact, sometimes I say, what was I thinking when I voted for that bill? You can't expect anybody to agree with you 100% of the time. But I've had a reputation of working well with everybody. And that's my reputation. Don't look at the rhetoric, look at the record.
All right, thank you. We're going to start with Senator Strickland. Oh, excuse me, Steve Knight. Let us turn to women's reproductive rights. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? And is Roe versus Wade settled law?
Well, I do believe Roe versus Wade is settled law. We are in the 41st year of Roe v. Wade. I didn't agree with Roe v. Wade. I didn't think it should be a federal issue. I thought it should have been a constitutional 10th Amendment issue. It should have been left up to the states. That being said, it is settled law today. Roe v. Wade is settled law. I am pro-life. I am, without exception, pro-life. I make no exception to my stance, just like I don't to you. My wife is a NICU nurse right over here at Antelope Valley Hospital, and I go over there and visit and tour the NICU all of the time. And it's interesting to see the advancements we're having in children these days, where today a 24-week baby is a viable baby, where about 10 years ago that moved up to about 27 weeks. But I make no exception. I'm pro-life.
Thank you, Senator Strickland.
I am pro-life with 3 exceptions. 3 exceptions being rape, incest, and threat to the mother's life. I think we need to make abortion rare. I do believe Roe v. Wade is settled law. I, like Steve, believe it should have been done in the states. But I do have 3 exceptions, exceptions of rape, incest, and threat to the mother's life.
Okay, we're going to start with Senator Strickland. How do you prioritize foreign versus domestic issues? In our post-recession world, the wars in the Middle East have cost in excess of trillions of dollars. Yet our schools, roads, rail, and even our own veterans are funding starved. Today there is a new saber rattling in Gaza, the Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, and elsewhere. Where does our role as policemen to the world begin and end?
I believe everything starts with a robust economy. Everything's connected to jobs and a robust economy. Healthcare, education, and national defense. I do believe America needs to lead around the world, because when we don't lead, a lot of people suffer. There is no greater friend that we have across the globe than Israel, and I think America needs to stand with Israel, especially in this conflict with Gaza. But not only Gaza, but what's happening now is everybody's focused on Gaza. Iran is about to have the ability for a nuclear capability, and that would not only be bad for Israel, that would be bad for the world. And we need to do whatever we can to make sure that that does not happen. In order to do that, America must lead.
Okay. Senator Knight.
Yeah, I don't like policemen of the world. I think that if you're a superpower, if you're a leader, then you have to lead. When we have friends out there and they are in distress, then we have to be with them. If we're not going to be, then we're not going to be friends with them. And if we have enemies out there that think we're weak, then they will do something to us. Right now what's happening in Israel is we give about $351 million to the Iron Dome every year. We have just requested an emergency $225 million. I fully support that. Every time you fire one of those rockets into the air, it's about $50,000. They're firing multiple rockets every day. If Israel is compromised, that will break down that region of the world. And I don't think anyone in here would argue that that region is the most difficult region that we've had over the last 100 years and probably over the next 100 years. We need to stand with them. We need to make sure that they know that we're with them. As far as domestic policy, we'll get to it.
Thank you, Knight. This last question of this particular round, we'll start with with Steve Knight. Do you support or oppose the Affordable Health Care Act, commonly referred to as Obamacare?
So I think there is a difference here, and you saw it in the debates in the primary. My opponent said his number one goal was to repeal Obamacare. Number one. In fact, in the first month of the season, he put out a commercial on radio that said, "I will go there and repeal Obamacare." He also had the chair of Armed Services on that commercial. Well, if he wanted to repeal it and he knew how to do it, he should have told the chair of Armed Services, because he's against it too. I would have not voted for Obamacare. I wouldn't have. I don't think it was the right path. But what we should do is not say that our goal is to go there and repeal it. Our goal should be to go there and lead and make it better for everyone. There are issues in Obamacare that can affect every one of us. We talk about the insurance across state lines. We talk about seeing our own doctor. We talk about, well, I talk about engaging the private community. Before Obamacare came in, Target, Walmart, and Walgreens came through and said, we want to build a clinic system. If they would have built that clinic system, the clinic would have been within 97% of the population, 20 miles. And we disengaged them. I think we should re-engage and have them part of this system.
Thank you. Last answer.
I am opposed to Obamacare. I do believe Obamacare is fundamentally flawed. I do believe the premiums going up. I believe health care should be for all. The promises about the insurance not going up and being able to cover and that your premium's not going to go up just didn't come to fruition. I do believe it's a poorly written piece of legislation. However, I do have a background in Sacramento to fight for something because I do believe we need to fix health care. Again, as I said, I authored Healthy Families Program, a program that worked for kids, to cover kids to have that health care insurance. The other thing is I do believe there's some good goals that we have to do. For example, children to be 26 under your parents' plan. I think that's a good goal. Cover people under pre-existing conditions. We need to do that. But also I think your health care should be portable. A large reason why we have a high uninsured health care population is a lot of people's health care is connected to their employment. And when you have high unemployment, not only do they lose their, individual families lose their job, they also lose their health care with their job. I know what it's like. My dad lost his job when I was a child. And that's something that's very, very stressful on an entire family. I'll never forget that. And then on top of losing that job, you're losing your health care for your family. I believe health care should be portable. So we do need to fix health care. I do oppose Obamacare because I do believe it's poorly written.
All right, I want to thank you for submitting your audience questions. I noticed that the prepared questions that we had, and then now we're going to enter our rapid fire round. Some of them have already been listed, so brilliant minds think alike. So what we're going to do now, rapid fire, is I'm going to ask a question, both candidates are going to answer, and they're going to have like a one-sentence answer. Think 20 seconds, okay? Okay, first one, we're going to start with Senator Strickland. What can we expect from the Veterans Health Administration investigation after a recent scandal revealed 40 veterans died waiting for treatment at VA facilities?
Well, I had a town hall here last night bringing in experts on what we can do to make sure that doesn't happen. First and foremost, what a lot of the experts were talking about was, we need to hold people accountable. A lot of people's health care gets pushed aside. And number two, we need to make sure, because right now there's a high demand and very low supply of healthcare providers. One of the ideas that came out last night that came from experts and constituents is the ability to have a credit, kind of an insurance card, that says a veteran, instead of having to go to Los Angeles or Sepulveda, a veteran can now go to your local provider, you can go to your local hospital, something Kaiser's actually offered to try to be a part of that. Those are the kinds of things, because right now the VA system in terms of health care is just choked up. There's not enough doctors working to provide for the demand.
Okay,
and
rapid fire, Senator.
Our veterans deserve to be taken care of.
Okay, Senator Knight.
Well, I'm glad something came out of that fundraiser at the American Legion last night.
Was not a fundraiser.
I've said that for 8 months. I've talked about that for 8 months. Why should a vet have to wait until brick and mortar is built in their neighborhood so that they can go get service? Why would we do that? That means that we're going to have to build a brick and mortar here. We're going to have to build one 20 miles away because it can't be outside the 45-mile area, and we're going to have to keep going. Why wouldn't we allow vets to go in and see their local provider and say, take care of them? If there is long-term, we have VA hospitals. We get that. But if it's short-term, you should be able to go in and see your local, and we can do that in a system with the VA.
Okay, Senator Strickland, I'd like to give you 15-second rebuttal.
No fundraiser. There was no fundraiser. No one asked for money. In fact, we didn't really talk about the campaign. We provided a service with experts. Every veteran that was there came up and said, we need to do this again. And I also believe legislators be able to go to experts and listen to constituents and not say, I have the answers for everything. I think the good legislators are the ones that can listen, work with experts, and work with the community to come up with real problems, with real solutions to real problems.
Thank you. Our next question, we're going to start with Steve Knight. Let's discuss the June primary. Who did you support in the 36th Assembly District?
So I supported Tom Lackey. I fully support Tom. Tom was a Palmdale School District trustee. He's been a Palmdale City Councilman for now on his third term. And Tom has shown true leadership here. Tom is one of those people that you know. You know what he says is what he's going to do. I think that Tom going to Sacramento would be a huge benefit to this area. So I fully support Tom in the primary and, of course, in the general.
Thank you. Senator Strickland.
I supported Suzette Martinez. I thought she was a young, energetic woman that could do a great job up in Sacramento. That said, I also believe J.D. Kennedy would have been a fantastic assemblyman and a strong leader for this community. That's who I support in the primary for the Assembly.
Okay, and we'll continue with that June primary. Senator Strickland, who did you support for governor and why?
Well, I didn't endorse anybody for governor. I just wasn't enthusiastic with my choices for governor. I was focused in on the campaign at hand, and I really just didn't endorse any candidate run for governor.
Senator Knight.
So I'm always going to stay engaged when I'm voting. I'm always going to look at the information. I'm always going to have a vote. If there was 2 Democrats in this race instead of 2 Republicans, I would vote. So I will always stay engaged. I did endorse Tim Donnelly. Tim was a person that was a little bit out there on certain issues, but on strong economic issues for the state, he was right on.
Okay. Our next question, we'll start with Senator Knight. Your critics, and you do have some, both of you. Your critics on social media have called one of you a carpetbagger and the other one as riding his daddy's coattails. What can you say that is complimentary about your opponent? Say something nice.
How much time do I have?
You only have 20 seconds, Senator.
Well, I appreciate Tony for stepping up and being able to run for office. It's not easy to go and put yourself out in front, put your family, take all of the abuse you're going to get on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere that you can possibly imagine. So I appreciate that from Tony. I appreciate that from anyone who's going to run for office. It's a very difficult process.
I concur. It's never easy to run for office, and in a competition. Look, I played sports, and we're in competition, and Steve Knight is a scratch golfer. He's phenomenal, and so he's an athlete as well as I am. So we're competitors. We both think that we have something to offer this district, but we're going to fight for this seat. And I'm hopeful a day after Election Day, we reach across, we shake hands, and say, let's work together, because that's what our democracy is about. So I have admiration for Steve. He has a wonderful family. I actually served in the legislature with his father. I think the Knight family is a very special family.
Okay. Senator Strickland, we'll start with you. The federal workforce and its retirees are an integral part of running our country, such as DOD, FAA, Post Office, Social Security workers. If elected, what would you do to support this group and ensure that they are not perennially on the chopping block?
Well, I believe federal workers serve a vital purpose for running our government, and they provide benefits to our citizens. Much like when we're elected, we have a staff that we work together with, and a lot of constituents, when they call and have an issue or a problem, we call it casework. We don't ask them if they're Democrat or Republican. We try to do what we can to help our constituents solve problems. And that's what the federal workforce is doing. They're trying to do the best job that they can to be able to serve their constituents and serve their country. And so we need to treat them with dignity and respect.
Thank you.
Many of the groups that we've enumerated here, many of the government groups do a phenomenal job. I'm a big supporter of what happens at the post office, of what happens in the FAA. They keep us safe when we're flying. It's not an easy job. In fact, right down the road from here, you're going to find the FAA here that takes care of a huge region from Vegas up north all the way down to, I believe, San Diego, right here in Palmdale. So I would support them. I think an awful lot of them are veterans. An awful lot of them have a commitment to that group and to the country. I just think that if we're going to look at the budget as a whole, then we've got to look at what the job is that's being done.
Thank you, Senator. Gentlemen, what Republican exemplifies your style of governance and leadership? Are you a Ted Cruz Tea Partier or John McCain the Maverick? And we'll start with Senator Strickland. Who are you?
I wouldn't be either one of those people. The person I really admire besides Ronald Reagan, everybody always says Ronald Reagan on the Republican side, Jack Kemp. I don't know if anybody knows who Jack Kemp is. When I was in college, I drove in a presidential motorcade. I know it's 15 seconds, I'll try to make it quick. A lot of angry people. Things were burned down. He was HUD secretary at the time. Most of the politicians ran to get a photo op. Jack Kemp ran over to the crowd, started talking about enterprise zones and doing what we can to help grow inner city economy. From that day forward, I modeled myself after Jack Kemp.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Tony. I'm not going to pick either one of those. But I am going to pick someone who's a little bit close to home here, and that's our congressman to the east, and that's Paul Cook. Colonel Cook and I served in the Assembly. He got elected to the House of Representatives, and I've always had an affection to Colonel Cook, not just because he's a 26-year Marine and he was a combat Marine in Vietnam, but people respected him because he did what he said. And people looked up to him. And I always thought, that's not just because you're a veteran, that's not just because you're a little older than some of us, but that's because of your commitment and what you've said and what you've done.
Thank you, Senator Knight. Speaking of representatives, LA County Supervisor Mike Antonovich will be retiring soon. Can you definitively say that you will not run for the supervisor's open seat in 2 years? And will you sign a pledge to that effect? We'll start with Senator Knight.
I have no, I will not be a supervisor. I have known Supervisor Antonovich for about 34 years. In fact, he's the reason I'm married. He sponsored my wife from Chile. I love the man, and he's a great man and a great family. And whoever gets to follow him gets to follow him. And that's a very tough thing. But I have no desire to be the LA County Supervisor. I have every desire to be the congressman for this area.
Thank you.
Answer the questions, yes. I'm not going to run for Mike Antonovich's seat.
Last question in this rapid fire round, and we'll start with Senator Strickland. Does raising the minimum wage hurt or help the economy?
Well, in terms of going back to Congress, the California minimum wage is at $9, $10, and so the proposal back in Washington is even less than what we have currently here in California. So I just think that's a moot point in terms of going back to Congress in terms of minimum wage.
Well, I think it can hurt the economy. I think here in California we're raising it to $9, and then in another year we're going to raise it to $10. There's an issue at the federal level to do a 10-10. There's also an issue to do a 15-50. You can't go outside of the parameters or you're going to lose minimum wage jobs. Remember, this is the first time in our history that technology can take away minimum wage jobs. We saw it in the 50s and 60s with robotics taking away middle-class jobs in the automotive industry. We've seen it in the aerospace industry where you have a 36-axis drill that'll take away machinists. Right now, go into a Vons or an Albertsons and you'll see a self-checkout. Those are bagger jobs. Technology can take them away. So if we move too fast on minimum wage, business will kill some jobs.
Thank you, Senator. So that ends our rapid fire round. We are moving on to your audience questions. And I'm going to start with two tough ones, and they're for each of you. The first one is for Senator Strickland. Why aren't you running in the district where you live?
Well, I represented a huge portion of the 25th Congressional
20
seat.
seconds.
And I grew up in this district. I grew up in the other end of the district in Simi Valley, represented a large portion of Santa Clarita, that portion of San Fernando Valley, Castaic, Lake Hughes, and down to Simi Valley. I live 2 miles from the district, but what you're really asking is who's going to represent the community. And I'm encouraged, and I will tell you, those 2 miles, I will fight for you. If I'm lucky enough, and I'm learning the Antelope Valley, I'm up here all the time meeting with folks, and no one will fight for the entire portion of the 25th District more than me if I'm lucky enough to be your congressman.
Okay. We're going to try to keep this as 20 seconds because we have a lot of audience questions. Senator Knight, why would one choose to abandon a position in Sacramento legislature for a position in Congress when you've only been in office for 2 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a void, 22 years of the same leader in the House of Representatives. And I spoke with several folks in the area, and I said that we have to have a strong leader to go to Washington, D.C. to speak on what is our ideals, what's right for us. And I think that, yes, I am leaving the Senate if elected with 2 years left on my Senate, but you're also getting a leader here that will go to D.C. to fight for the rights right here. And that could happen for a very long time. So I made that decision.
Thank you. Okay, this will be for both candidates. And gentlemen, again, we're trying to keep it at 20 seconds. Well, let's start with Senator Knight. What is your position on medical marijuana use, especially for use by women with breast cancer?
So as a police officer, I was sworn to uphold the law. There's no doubt about that. I think that medical marijuana has aspects that we should look at in this country. I absolutely do. But when states do it on their own, and there's still a national law, we put ourselves at a difficult situation. I think if the movement is going to be that we're going to have marijuana use or medical marijuana use, it should be at the federal level. Look, if you use marijuana for glaucoma or something that is affecting you in such a way, it's probably not as strong a drug as many of the other drugs that can be prescribed to you.
Thank you.
I also agree it should be a federal issue because when federal and state laws conflict, a lot of people they're breaking the law either way and no fault of their own. For medical marijuana when you're sick, I don't see a problem with medical marijuana when you're ill, when you're sick, and if that's what the doctor thinks is the best way to prescribe your illness. And I agree with Steve. There's a lot of other drugs out there that are probably more potent than medical marijuana.
Senator Strickland, we'll start with you again. How do you feel or describe your position on birthright citizenship?
Well, if you're born in the United States, I believe you're a United States citizen, pure and simple.
Senator Knight?
Well, I do too. It's constitutionally set that's how you are a birthright citizen. I think there will be discussion over the next 25 years. There's already been discussion if you are your mother or not. Now, that's going to be a constitutional change. And I don't see that happening in this country right now. I think that following the Constitution is the right way.
Senator Knight, it's for both of you. In the last 4 years, Governor Perry from Texas has approached companies in California with incentives to move to Texas. What are you doing or what will you do to keep companies in California and maintain our economy?
Well, the greatest thing we can do here in California is not change the rules every year. That's what gives Governor Perry a leg to come over here and say, hey, what happened last year? Oh, they changed those rules? That's the worst thing. It's not the taxes. It's not the regulations. We don't like them. They're both high. But almost to a T, every company I've ever talked to said, I'll pay the taxes. Just don't change it on me every year. That's what Texas has done. They've allowed you to go over there with a 10-year business plan and perform in Texas. We need to be better in California.
Thank you, Senator Strickland.
Well, California needs to fight for every job that, especially mortgage-paying jobs. As I mentioned before, I was author of a bill because there was a problem in movie runaway production. Canada was offering incentives, New Mexico and other states. Look, we don't have to equal other states. We just got to be in the ballpark. Because we're in the ballpark, we're a more desirable place to live. But we need to fight for those jobs. And hopefully when we improve and have those kinds of economic abilities, then we can go to other states and bring those jobs to California. Not only were we going to be in the ballpark on those economic issues, but we have the best weather and one of the best environments in the world.
Thank you. Next question for both of you, and I'm going to rephrase it a little bit because I don't think this was written by a Democratic Club member. Here goes. Oh, this is a tough one to rephrase. Here we go. Gentlemen, do you think that we can reverse the damage that some perceive the Obama administration has done to our country? That's as nicely and politely as I can put it. Why don't we start with Senator Strickland?
I actually think everybody in Washington's at fault. I don't think Obama's done a good job personally. President Obama, sorry. But it takes two to tango. And as I mentioned, we need to look back to previous leaders like Ronald Reagan, working with Tip O'Neill, Bill Clinton, working with Newt Gingrich and Bob Dole. And I hope to change that kind of culture back in Washington, that again, it doesn't matter what idea, Republican, Democrat idea, it only matters a good idea, and people need to work together.
Thank you. Senator Knight.
Well, obviously I'm a Republican and the President is a Democrat, so there is a difference of opinion. That's why we have a two-party system. The President's going to do some things that I don't agree with, and I'm going to do some things that the President would not agree with. But to say that there's been so much damage, that how do we take this back and how do we get our country going in the right direction? Look, I'm going to go back there and say I believe this would help our country. I would like to work with the administration. They made it very clear. This is my president. President Obama is not someone that I voted for, but he is my president. My goal is not to go back there and combat or yell and scream about everything he does. My goal is to go back there and work with the administration. Try and get something better for this country.
Thank you, Senator. The next question has to do with water, and why normally that would be a state issue. Describe what advocacy or what you would do to help the water drought issue in California. We'll start with Steve Knight.
So very tough in 20 seconds, but right now we're talking about a water bond. There's 4 different items up in Sacramento that we're talking about. One of those water bonds will hopefully be on this ballot in November. Please vote for it. If we do not fix the water problem here in California, and we have another year like this last year, water companies in this state will run out of water. That means you turn on the spigot and nothing comes out. So if we don't fix this, and part of the water bond isn't just the delta, isn't just above ground storage, but it's fixing our levees. If we don't do that, then shame on us. We're looking at tens of billions of dollars of possible problems in the future.
Thank you, Senator.
I agree. Water's the lifeblood of our economy, and we need to solve this problem. In the state Senate, I voted for the water bond. It got delayed a couple different times, but I think it's essential that we solve the water problem, that we need to make sure we have enough storage on water. We need to look at other ways. Desal's an opportunity. We need to look at all the different ways that we have an opportunity to make sure that we have water, and it's the lifeblood of our economy.
This next question sounds like it's for Steve Knight, but I'll allow both of you. So the premise is, if Steve Knight is elected to Congress, who would you support or endorse to fill your state Senate seat?
The best person. I don't know. That is way cart before the horse. My goal is to run for Congress and to win a seat. If I am successful, then this community will have to look at the people that want to run for Senate at that time. And I will, like I said, endorse the best person.
Thank you. Senator Strickland.
I don't plan that happening. I plan on being the next congressman from the 25th Congressional District.
You didn't know you were coming for entertainment, did you? Okay, well that ends our audience question portion of this afternoon. So let us move on to the next portion, which is where each candidate will get a chance to ask a question of the opponent. And again, earlier we tossed a coin, and Senator Knight will ask Senator Strickland a question first.
So I'm going to ask this as a secondary question because I've already asked it. In your candidate statement, it clearly states, I want to go to Congress to oppose Obama and Obamacare. How can I, as a voter, expect you to go and work with an administration that's going to be there for 2 years for your first term if anything the administration says you will oppose?
Let's get one minute.
1 minute to answer that. Okay. It said oppose Obamacare. It is my president. I'm hopeful to go back there. And then one of the things that legislators don't do very often that I did when I was in Sacramento is get people on a bipartisan level to go get to know each other, go out and do something fun. You know, Obama's a basketball player. I play semi-pro basketball. I plan when I get elected to call him, say let's shoot some hoops and let's talk about some of the issues. Because if they like you personally and you work to, and they like you on a personal level, they'll work to try to fix some of the problems. And I think that's the key for leadership.
Thank you. Okay, so next is Senator Strickland. You get to ask Senator Knight a question.
Senator, in the primary, I noticed on your Twitter account on March 31st, you were in D.C. and you met with some conservative groups back in Washington, D.C. But then I noticed on your FEC reports that you had no payments for any flights in your campaign. I'm just asking, who paid for the flights to go back to Washington?
Correct, I did. We met with some groups. We didn't, I think we were only there for 2 days, only one trip back to D.C., and I did.
I think I'm going to allow a 15-second rebuttal because I think you were trying to get at a different question.
No, that's the question. If you paid Senator Knight, the Federal Elections Commission says that you needed to report it as an in-kind donation.
Absolutely, and I'll go back and I'll look at my FEC report, and if it's in error, then we'll make a correction. Just like on your candidate statement, you saying opposing Obama and continually saying here you didn't.
Okay, that was a rebuttal to the rebuttal. All right, thank you, gentlemen. We are at that point of closing remarks. And again, in an earlier coin toss, we will have Steve Knight, our senator, start a 2-minute closing remark presentation.
So I want to thank you again for coming out today. It's very important to be engaged. It's very important to know who you're voting for. And it's very important to know who's going to represent us at the federal level. I want to be that person. I think I've proven in this area, in a wide variety of issues, of that I can lead and that I can reach out to you. Now, the reason I give you my phone number is so you can call me. The reason I don't ask for every one of your phone number is because there's 907,000 of you. So if you do want to call me about an issue, that's why I make it very available. I will do the same thing at the federal level. I think that there are opportunities here for growth, opportunities for jobs, opportunities for aerospace to expand over the next 10, 15 years, opportunities for our defense to be stronger in several different fashions. Not just how many tanks we buy or how many airplanes we put in, but how much cyberspace we are doing. How much defense? Are we looking after our banking system? Those types of issues I want to talk about in the defense. And nobody over the last 6 years has been more intricate in our veteran community. That's proven. I've written more bills than anyone, including the 2 governors. I will continue to do that at the federal level. We have an awful lot of issues going on with the VA. We can correct some of those. People shouldn't die on a death list waiting for treatment that they should have gotten. I want to go there to look out for our opportunities. to look out for the future, to look out for our vets, to look out for our elderly. That's why I want to be your representative. And this is my district. You're not going to find somebody, you're not going to find me running for a state office because I lose my district. I certainly wouldn't run for president. But you won't find me running outside this district. This is where I live. This is where my friends and family are. This is where I grew up. This is where I graduated school. This is the district that I want to represent. I'm not going to shop around. I want to lead you. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 minutes for Senator Tony Strickland.
This is the district I grew up in. I grew up in Simi Valley, and it's in the district. Don't look at the record. Don't look at the rhetoric. Look at the record. You want someone to go back to Washington. We already have enough people that don't work on a bipartisan level that says my way or the highway. I have a record in Sacramento working across the aisle. When asked to be specific, I mentioned the RPS, Renewable Energy Standard. I mentioned equal pay for equal work for women. I mentioned healthy families. I have demonstrated that I don't care if it's a Republican idea, a Democratic idea, I care if it's a good idea. And yes, I will give you out my cell phone number too, 805-573-4196. But I'm not going to wait for you to call me. I'm going to call you. I'm going to sit down, and I was shocked when I talked to many Democratic leaders in the Antelope Valley, had a cup of coffee, and when I found out 8 to 10 to 12 years that you've been represented by the senator, that he has not done that. You talk to Jim D'Antona, who's a leader in the Democratic Party in Simi Valley. I had a working relationship, and it was often I called Jim D'Antona and said, let's talk about some issues, let's figure out what we can do to work together. Does it mean I agree with you 100% of the time? No. I'm a proud Republican. But I'm one that when I get elected to the 25th Congressional District, I'm not only going to represent the Republican Party, I'm representing all the citizens of the 25th Congressional District, and I'd be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Well, that concludes our candidate forum. I'd like to invite our president, Jonathan Urban, to say some closing remarks.
Okay. Great debate, great debate. This is what democracy is about. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out. We have a full house. Humbly, thank you for coming today. I'd like to thank the LA Times, the Signal. Welcome to the Antelope Valley. We hope you come back to cover us. A lot of great things happening here. AV Media, Time Warner, Steve Benson. I'd like to thank the candidates. Senator Knight, appreciate you coming out and participating. Tony Strickland, I appreciate you coming out and participating as well. Sandy, great moderating. You kept those guys in line. I really appreciate that. Great job. Arthur, timekeeper, kept him right on. I appreciate that. Veronica, thank you for helping organize this. Brandon is here somewhere. I'd also like to thank the Machinists Union, Penny and Alan, for helping us put this together and giving us this space, because this is absolutely incredible. I appreciate it. Like I said before, I'll state it again. Us as a community need to stay engaged. If we don't do that, our entire democracy suffers, because everyone should take a part in choosing who our representative is, because they are going to be representing the entire Antelope Valley, just like the gentleman stated. So we're going to do a straw poll, so we're going to hand out some marbles. Do you have them? Yep. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the Antelope Valley Press. They're homers, so I didn't do that. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. As everyone walks out, we'll hand you a marble, and you'll drop it in one or the other box. And so, thank you for coming. We do have refreshments. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Nice to see you.